Welcome and hello. I'm Paula Bartholomew. I'm always delighted that you've joined me for Hawthorn University's All About Alumni series. This is where we get to hear directly from our graduates about the exciting things they're doing professionally. And today we meet Hawthorn graduate Wendy Borden, who's going to talk with us about healing meals, nourishing the community one meal at a time. And together we'll learn about being diagnosed with cancer or other life-threatening illnesses and how that brings unique nutritional challenges. It's a time in life where there's a tremendous need for nourishment, yet people often have a reduced capacity to provide healthy meals for themselves and their family. Well, the Revive and Thrive Project is a nonprofit that provides free and delivered meals to cancer patients, simultaneously teaches teens valuable cooking and life skills, and promotes a vibrant local food system. Wendy's going to discuss starting a nonprofit, being an advocate for holistic nutrition, and the importance of educating the community on the connection between food, health, local sustainable agriculture. What a terrific thing to be doing. Hello, Wendy, and welcome. I'm so excited to be here together.
Hi, Paula. It's a pleasure to be here with all of you today. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. I'm going to introduce you now if you're ready.
Mm-hmm.
My pleasure. Wendy Borden is committed to promoting health through nutrition, and Wendy received her master's in holistic nutrition from Hawthorn University, and in 2014 she founded the Revive and Thrive Project in Grand Rapids, Michigan, which is an affiliate partner of the Ceres Community Project and is an advocate for holistic nutrition in a large medical community. She's hopeful that we can create a culture, a community where wholesome foods are not controversial, complicated, or confusing, but where healthy eating is valued, supported, and available to all. Well, I love that, Wendy. So why don't we start with how you got started in this field and doing the work that you're doing now.
Great. Well, Hawthorn University had a really, really huge impact on my life in a number of different ways. But I was a student, like some of you are on the call, and I was listening to a Hawthorn University webinar, and it was about the Ceres Community Project. And I was so moved about the work that they were doing that I thought, wow, I'm sure that our community needs a program like this. I think every city, should have a program like this in their community. And I remember getting off the phone and saying, wow, this is what I want to do. This is really exciting. This just changed my whole direction of what I wanted to do. And so I contacted Ceres and let them know I was really excited about their program. And I asked them if I could do my master's thesis project with them. And, we finally figured out a project, and I ended up surveying their teens. And the whole idea was to find out how they took teens from junk food to whole food and how to improve the health of teens through community-based nutrition programs. And it was fascinating. I was really excited about working with teens and getting our next generation out into the world with healthy eating skills. And so it was great to do my master's thesis with Ceres. And having my degree, a master's in holistic nutrition, really provided me with that credibility to be able to get the program started. I think if I just had a certificate in nutrition, I wouldn't have been able to really launch this program, not only in terms of the knowledge that I needed to start it, but also with the credibility I needed.
That's fantastic. It really is heartwarming to know that with everything that you were gaining in your education at Hawthorn through your curriculum, that it was a webinar presentation from Ceres that really fused the idea of where you could go with this. So I'm thrilled that you were able to partner with them and work with them and complete a really brilliant thesis that you did, and as well as be able to launch such a valuable program. So let's talk a little bit more about the Revive and Thrive Project.
All right. Well, the Revive and Thrive Project is very similar to Ceres Community Project. So we provide teens with growing and cooking and healthy eating skills while simultaneously providing those with life-threatening illnesses, usually cancer patients, with healing meals. And so we provide free delivered healing meals every week to cancer patients during their treatment and recovery process. So our main core areas are teen empowerment. We bring teens into the kitchen so they can learn how to cook healthy foods, and I'm going to go through all of these in a little bit more detail throughout the presentation. Our healing meals to those in need of nourishment during their treatment and recovery. I named the project Revive and Thrive. We're trying to get people to revive from a place of being very ill and deconditioned and malnourished to a place where they can truly thrive. And we also provide a lot of nutrition education along the way, so that's going to hopefully promote long-term healthy eating skills and survivorship. We also really strive to have a multicultural, intergenerational community program, and not only do we want to have that be part of our internal program, but we also are just trying to create a really strong sense of community for the people who are receiving meals. It's really powerful for these people to be able to know that so much work is being done for them by total strangers, and so we want them to feel loved and nourished by the community. And then a huge part of our program is supporting local food systems. Thankfully, here in Grand Rapids, Michigan, we have a pretty robust agriculture system. We're working on having this be a little bit more, organic and sustainable focused, but there's a lot of really wonderful food producers and growers that are producing clean, organic, nutrient-rich foods here. And so we try to support our local farmers through our food purchases, and also with the idea that we're providing the most nutrient-rich food available for those in need.
Wendy, this is really I'm sorry to interrupt, but it's really a personal project to you too, I think, from the beginning, because, and I don't mean to put you on the spot with this, but if you want to talk about you and your mother and how that fits in here.
Yes, thank you. Well, I had finished, I was all set to start this Revive and Thrive project in Grand Rapids. I finished my thesis, and about 2 months after I finished, I was diagnosed with breast cancer, and my mom was diagnosed 3 weeks later. And at the time, I think my son was about 3. And it was a long, long journey. I had 8 surgeries over about a 3-year period. But when I first got diagnosed, I found that, here I have this great knowledge about healthy eating. Okay, I'm going to be prepared. I know what I should be eating, and I'm going to be empowered with all these healthy foods that's going to just get me through all this in a snap. But then I found, like many of our patients, that it's a time in your life where you have the greatest need for nourishment and the least capacity to provide that for yourself. And I had a 2-pound weight limit restriction. So I would look at the blender and think, oh my gosh, okay, I'm too tired to clean the blender to make a smoothie, and 2, it's going to be too heavy to lift. And so then, you'd whip out some, peanut butter and jelly, and it might be organic, no sugar, jam made with local berries, and, organic, no sugar peanut butter. But that's certainly not what my body needed. And I thought, my gosh, here I have a master's degree in holistic nutrition, but I can't provide healthy food for myself, let alone my mom and my child. And it was so frustrating, because I wanted to do that. I wanted to be, juicing and smoothies and doing all these things for myself and my mom, and we just simply couldn't do that. And so that drove me to be able to start this project. I literally started the Revive and Thrive project at home in my pajamas over the years, but knowing that if I couldn't do this, there must be other people who didn't have the resources, or they couldn't afford healthy food, or they didn't have the knowledge or the accessibility to healthy food. What were they doing? And I have heard just some really heart-wrenching stories of, young teenagers who, instead of being in a cooking program like ours, were taking the bus to the food bank to get bread and cans of beans to help provide meals for their parent with cancer. And I just knew that we needed this, and we needed to, there's so many different aspects of this. Part of our core area is the teens, and the teens are our next generation of parents and educators and policymakers, and we really need to send them out into the world with some healthy eating skills. We really needed to be able to provide our families with nutrient meals and really educate the community about the connection between food and health. And that's something that I've been striving to do, is really working on making an impact to our healthcare providers about the relevance of this, because we all know what hospital food is like, and it's amazing what they offer you in chemotherapy. It's just like junk food, and it's just crazy. So, yeah, lots of work to be done.
Thank you for sharing that. It must have been quite a sobering moment to have a dual diagnosis with you and your mother, but I think this is kind of a situation where you get a diagnosis like this and an illness, and it morphs into the gift of giving, and
Yeah.
has allowed you to have the compassion and insight that you might not have otherwise felt and known to be able to bring this project forward. So thank you so much, and I'm going to let you continue with telling us more about Revive and Thrive.
Yeah. So we were founded in 2014. That's when I actually got our 501(c)(3). We started our first meal delivery in May of 2015. We found a church that kindly hosts us, and we are looking for a new and improved kitchen space, but we still are at that church. And we have served to date 8,000 meals to about 80 cancer patients and their family members. And I think that's the unique part of the program I'll talk about, is we also serve family members. We have about anywhere from 35 to 40 volunteers that come together on our cooking day and make this program happen. And so it's really inspiring. We're a volunteer-based program, and we're really starting to make some waves in our community.
Do you want to talk a little bit about what kind of foods you serve, and tell us more about your healing meals?
Yes, actually, let me go back, and I'm going to run through a few other slides, and I'll get into detail about the foods. I have some photos, too, that I want to share. So these is one photo of some of the teens in our kitchen. Our teens are anywhere from 14 to 18, and most of them didn't necessarily have any cooking skills. They were volunteered by a parent, or they heard about our program. And we've had to do no recruiting at all for our teen chefs. We had a small handful to start with, and they just keep coming. They refer the program to friends. Here's some other great photos of our teens in there. We really try to have it be a teen-centered kitchen, so we do some prep work ahead of time, but they're really getting in there, and they are involved with every aspect of the kitchen. They help with the cooking, they help with the packaging, they help do dishes. And we're trying to teach them, you know, long-term healthy eating skills, why healthy food is important, the joy of serving others. And we also have a teen circle every week, and we talk a little bit about, you know, why the food that we're using is important. You know, what's the difference between conventional versus organic? You know, we get in conversations about our food quite a bit, and it's just really, it's really great. Last week we talked about the difference between maple syrup and log cabin, and most of them didn't even realize that, you know, the log cabin types of flavored syrup weren't even real maple syrup. So it was fun. And, you know, why do teens need this? I think, you know, we all know this is just one of the research projects that show the top 10 sources of calories, right? There's not a fruit or vegetable on here. And so a lot of teens, you know, they're the microwave generation. They're eating a lot of fast foods and drinking sodas and ready-to-eat foods and processed foods. And so we want to try to teach them how to cook with whole, fresh foods. And I only wish that somebody would have taught me how to cook when I was a teenager or in college. It would have made such a difference early on. So a little bit real quick about who we serve. This is a picture of one of our clients and her daughter. And, you know, I used to think of cancer patients as really being, you know, 60s, 70s, my mom's age. The majority of people in our program are in their 30s and 40s. Over half of the people in our program have kids under the age of 4. So there's definitely a huge need out there. The people who are eligible for meals we don't have any financial income. You could be wealthy, you could be low income. We just want to try to target people who have a minimal support structure. So people living alone, or people like myself who are caregivers for other people in the home. Those, certainly if they can't afford or have availability to help with healthy food options. One of our biggest criteria is they have to have a willingness to eat healthy food and try new foods, because for a lot of these folks, they may have never tried quinoa or kale, and sometimes we show them a sample menu and they think, oh, I eat fast food 3 days a week. I'm not sure if I'm ready for this program. And so they at least have to have kind of a willingness and a desire to try new foods and eat healthy foods, because we don't want the foods to get thrown away or wasted. And we provide 12 to 24 weeks, that's 3 to 6 months, of free delivered meals for everyone in the family who has a willingness to eat healthy foods. Sometimes for kids, we'll just send smaller quantities. We provide 4 complete dinners, a quart of soup, hearty salad, a mixed green salad, immune broth, and a healthy dessert. We deliver food once a week, and so they get pretty much, our meals are huge. So a lot of people say that they really get anywhere between 5 to 6 dinners and 4 to 5 lunches. And then we also provide a lot of nutrition education along the way. In each of their food bags, they get a handout about maybe a food of the week and a recipe, and trying to talk about maybe transitional foods and how to encourage healthy eating. We also do nutrition education classes too.
I just think it's so great that you're eating whole. Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm so excited that you're serving whole families too, because if one person's this ill, oftentimes it could be the person that's primarily in charge of the meals for the family, and if they go out, everybody else still needs to eat. So bravo for taking care of everybody.
Thanks. A classic example of that was, we had this woman who was raised in Spain. She had grown up on this, lovely Mediterranean diet. And then she was diagnosed with cancer when she was 41. She had twin 7-year-olds and a husband that didn't cook. And she called me in like a panic, like, if my husband has to care for me, the only thing I'm going to eat is pizza and bacon, and I know that's not healthy for me. And she was worried she didn't qualify because they had a fairly steady income. And I said, it's really not about that. It's about the need for support. And so she was so grateful, and she really understood that. She understood what our food, was all about.
Mm-hmm. Great example. Thanks.
Yeah. So now I can go back and tell you a little bit more. You'd asked me about what kind of food do we serve. So we strive to do local, seasonal, fresh, organic / clean foods. It's a little bit more challenging sometimes in Michigan to have organic. We have a lot of food producers here that are not certified organic, but they don't spray, or they're low spray, or they're clean. They're more clean than some of the conventional foods. So we strive for that whenever possible. But the whole idea is that we want the meals to be as nutrient rich as possible, and really, nutrient dense. If somebody can only get in 3 bites that day, I really want it to count. So many times when I think they say 80% of cancer patients are malnourished, and you just can't eat, or you're not feeling well, you're nauseous. And so if you can only get a couple bites, we want that to be chock full of minerals and vitamins and enzymes and fats and fiber and protein and all those protective phytonutrients to support the immune system and cellular health. So, we believe, as I learned from Hawthorn, that diet rich in all these nutrients is the foundation from which our body builds, repairs, and sustains life. So it was a little bit new for our chef here in the Midwest, but he's really gotten on board and learned a lot about things, and I've given him Rebecca Katz's cookbooks and the ones from Ceres, and he's really doing well with it. And these are some foods that we exclude. Things with chemicals and food colorings and high fructose corn syrup and sweeteners, and we try to avoid genetically modified foods. and all, foods that are not clean, that are going to have pesticides and hormones and antibiotics, because when you're going through any kind of illness, not just cancer, you're probably on some kind of treatment or surgeries or medications, and so all those things are depleting nutrients out of your body, and you really, if you're only going to get in a meal or two at a time, or for that day, it's got to be chock full of healthy, healing foods or ingredients, rather than, they're getting enough chemicals through their treatments or their medications. And so we don't want to add to that. We also serve our soup and our immune broth in glass mason jars for the same reason. We don't want to take this really healthy, amazing broth and put it into a styrofoam cup and add a bunch of chemicals to it. So here's a picture from one of our clients who was on our meal program, and we delivered one of her meals, and she said, "Oh, wait, I want you guys to take a picture and send it back to your team," and she wrote a little quick thank you on it. So it's definitely a big impact for our clients.
Yeah, so lovely.
Yep, and here's a picture of our chef and one of our volunteers, and so this is a sample of meals for one person. And we use these paper biodegradable containers that are heat sealed, and they get 4 of the entrees, and 2 of the 4 entrees are always vegetarian. We strive to be 2/3 of the plate containing of plant-based whole foods, and that's supported by the American Institute of Cancer's research on a healthy plate format. And we feel, most people are capable of getting meat into their diet, and so we want to try to educate them on some vegetarian or plant-based foods. So 2 of the 4 entrees every week are vegetarian. The salads are vegetarian. The soup occasionally is, and that way we're just trying to get more grains and fiber. A big focus in our program is high calorie, high protein, so we do make sure that those vegetarian entrees are going to be really high in protein, because when you're trying to heal, you're trying to build, and so we need to focus on those building foods and high proteins and plenty of calories. And so there's some of our soup in the mason jars and one of our salads. And a little bit about where our food comes from. We actually have to switch our garden space, but we have had this lovely urban garden, and the teams rotate through the garden as well as our volunteers throughout the season. And it's been really great. In the growing season, which is a little shorter here in Michigan, we can actually go and pick our herbs and our greens and some of our vegetables. We're working with other garden programs to be able to, and home gardeners, to be able to get as much locally grown fresh whole foods into our program as possible. Let's see, and so I just want to kind of wrap up the whole bundle here on the program. So a typical day at the Revive and Thrive project. We start out with grocery shopping. It's always the farmer's market first, which we're getting into winter here, so it's a little bit less on the produce, but we have lots of good options for pasture-raised animal products. And then we have a prep team that comes in because we have a few teens that are homeschooled, but most of our teens are coming after school. And since there's a limited amount of time for them in the 3.5 to 4 hours that they're there to cook that much food, we have a prep team that comes in that pretty much just washes and cuts and dices. And so when they get there, some of that is done, and then they get a recipe handed to them with a chef mentor, and they start cooking. And then we get it packaged up, and then our delivery angels come and deliver it. And also for the people that are on our meal program, we have client liaisons which provide weekly contact, check in with them, find out how the meals are going for them, explain maybe what quinoa or kombu or some of these other ingredients that aren't common to them are, and how to use them. We also have interns that are doing nutrition education classes and helping do handouts and things like that.
Do you are the delivery angels? Do they also cook and prep in the kitchen, or is that a separate function?
No, that's a separate group. You find a different, and that was one of my challenges, is trying to find the volunteers that had a particular interest and also had the availability. So for people who work, a delivery angel is a great job because the delivery angels come about 6:30 at night and deliver the meals that we've been preparing all day out. And so then if somebody is retired or has the days free, then they're able to be maybe part of our prep team.
So this would be not necessarily teenagers, this would be adults that were doing the deliveries?
We have some teen-parent combos for teens that necessarily didn't have the availability to be in the kitchen. So as long as there's a driver that's 18 years of age or older.
Okay. No, I think it's fantastic to be able to meet the clients also and see their, directly what their experience is, how they're living, and what their needs are.
Yeah. And I'll quickly mention, because that is a really special role for the delivery angels, and the client liaisons, they have contact with the clients. We do try to have clients come in and speak to our teens and our prep team and chef mentors when they're feeling better, or maybe previous clients that have been in the program, and, coming to thank them and letting them know that the impact of what they're doing in the kitchen every week has been for them, and that's really powerful. It's one of my favorite things that we do.
Yeah, really beautiful. Well, you talked a little bit about your participants. Is there more that you have to say about the impact this program is having on them?
Yeah, and I'm really trying to follow in the lead of the Ceres Community Project. They did an amazing 2.5-year research project about the outcomes of the program, and they have before and after surveys, which we're working on getting a little bit more of. But when I did my research thesis with Ceres, it was fascinating to find out that the teens were actually eating 3 servings of vegetables a day. They were eating a greater variety of nutrients. They were drinking less soda, and it's like, wow, there's so many programs in the country that are trying to get us to eat healthy, or education programs in schools, but I found that programs like this in Ceres are really effective at actually making change. And, as nutritionists, that's one of our biggest challenges, right? How do we actually create change? And so I love being able to see the teens, they're not only learning to cook from scratch, and they're having a whole new view on food quality and different foods. And most of them have said, we haven't researched our teens yet, but one teen is really excited that she went from I don't know what it was like a liter of soda every weekend, and down to one 16-ounce can. I'm like, that's great, that's amazing. They all have their individual stories about, what has been the biggest impact for them. And the clients, there's some great research that we're doing on how is this actually impacting them. And one of the biggest things was they found that obviously they're providing vital nourishment, but they felt less isolated, and it reduced stress. And those two things are really, really conducive to healing. There's a lot of research that shows when people are feeling isolated, it's bad for their health. And we know that people who are going through really heavy treatment, especially cancer treatments and chemo and radiation, they get really nutrient depleted very quickly. And so we're striving to have them hopefully heal faster and feel better. And one of our goals for the community in healthcare, there's something called the triple aim of healthcare. And so what that is we're trying to improve the patient experience, have better health outcomes, and lower healthcare costs long term. And so it's, there's these short-term things that you see that they do. They're all really, really grateful and supportive, and they say, it made them feel so much better, and just for some of them feeling cared for. I talked about that community element was one of the most powerful things for them. But I think reducing stress is huge, because we also know how bad that is for our health. So we're working on doing some research on what exactly the impact is for both our teens and clients. We did do a small survey on our volunteers, and it was really meaningful for them too to be involved. And I think one of my greatest moments after starting this project was when I got a thank you letter from a volunteer for being involved in the program. And I thought, That's, a measure of success, that when your volunteers are thanking you for the opportunity to be involved, that it's meaningful for them as well. And so if they're in the kitchen, they're learning some cooking skills, and they're working with clients. They're learning really sometimes how challenging going through a serious illness can be. But it's been amazing. We've had almost all of our volunteers. I'd say 85% of our volunteers have been with us since we started last year in May.
Taking this back to your local community in Grand Rapids, Michigan, and I'm wondering how this has been received, and you're in a major medical community in Western medicine there, so how's that going?
Well, that has been a little bit interesting. Thankfully, in 2014, Michigan was the first state in the nation to repeal the exclusionary nutrition and dietetics licensing law. So that was really good timing for me in being able to do this. So one of the guidelines for nutritionists in Michigan is that, quote, they are best served by completing a master's and or doctorate degree in nutrition-related major. And so I was like, great, this is great. I've got my master's from Hawthorn, and that did give me, quite a bit of credibility. I had the CEO of one of the largest medical hospital chains in the state of Michigan, who is the director of cancer services, bring me into her office. And she had heard about the program. She was really excited about it, but at least half of our discussion was really an interview. Who am I? How am I qualified to do this? What's my background? I also have a master's in recreation administration, and so she's like, well, recreation is a little bit different, but she said administration is administration, so that gives you some skills in terms of being the executive director component of it. But, sometimes it's a little bit funny. You'll be talking with dietitians, and they wonder, well, why on earth would you use butter? I thought this was a healthy program, or why wouldn't you use agave, or why, this and that. And I think it really comes down to what has been most empowering is we just serve whole foods that are as closest to their natural form as possible, so they are the most nutrient dense to promote healing. And that really seems to just make an impact, because it's hard to argue with that, right? It's hard to argue with that, yeah. Whole, fresh foods. And so sometimes, and they like the fact that it's plant-based. Sometimes they wonder about the butter versus the margarine, but I usually just go back to, grass-fed or pasture-raised, and these are the farms that we work with locally, and this is why we use their ingredients. But for the most part, it's been really well received, and it's a tough crowd. There's a lot of big hospitals and cancer centers here, but once you just go and take in your presentation and you talk about the food that you serve, and I talk a little bit less about what we don't serve, so it doesn't maybe hit somebody's button like, well, why wouldn't you do, what's wrong with GMOs? I just try to stick with the foods that we do serve, and that's gone over really well. But yeah.
No, I think it's so fantastic, the whole thing, and it takes a lot of courage for what you're doing, and I'm thrilled that you have it, and the stamina to stand up and be strong and be proud, and really, you've made some really smart calls here to share the information that you trust can be received well, and not to have to say things that couldn't be create conflict and that are unnecessary to have to say. So when they can see the benefit of something like this, you often get a lot of people jumping on board, because they can see that it's a service. They ought to be able to see that it's a service that's not providing in the value that it has for many, including your future generations that you're educating and training in the kitchen. I just think it's a brilliant project.
Well, thank you. And I do think that the healthcare community is starting to see, that, well, yes, we would like people to eat healthy, but okay, they might not have the ability to do so, and so this program is filling a huge gap in healthcare. And, you know, I don't think people necessarily like to admit that we don't have that, or that we're not offering something that is really critical to healing. But then in comes this project, and then they really start to warm up to it because they can see how vital it is. I mean, it's the whole food is medicine and how important that is. And so I keep just focusing on that aspect of it. And I will say that, you know, there was a time when I was a student that I thought, oh my gosh, am I ever going to get through this program? And then I thought, am I ever going to get through the thesis? You know, I got through the work, and then the thesis seemed so intense. And then starting the nonprofit, you know, there was definitely challenges. How do I get the 501(c)(3) and the board and the funding? And you just keep on keeping on. And I, you know, look back and think, well, I never thought I was going to get through that thesis, and it's done. And I wasn't sure I was going to get this project off the ground. And now we've served, you know, 8,000 meals, and we're growing. And I'm, you know, hopefully we're going to be able to increase the amount of we're hoping to double the amount of people we serve. And it just keeps growing, and it just keeps moving on. So I just really want to encourage everybody that things, you know, it's a seed. You plant a seed and you water it and you nurture it, and it grows into something amazing.
You know what I hope here is that I think it's fantastic that you're growing and that you're doubling the meals that you serve. There's such a need. I hope the need decreases because of the work that you're doing. I hope the educational component and the community outreach that you have is making an impression on people's lives and the way they're nurturing themselves with food and thought and deed. So thank you so much for the whole brilliant piece that you've put together here and modeled after Ceres. And it's, you know, to reach the teens, you're supporting the whole next generation, and how they'll continue to eat through their lives and what they'll feed their children will be very different. And I love it that you're touching bases with the registered dietitians as well, and that they're taking notice of what you're doing in very positive ways. So,
thank you, Paula. Thank you. And thanks. You know, I'm grateful again for my education at Hawthorn. None of this would have been possible to do, but I was so empowered with the education I had, and then seeing projects like Ceres that are working in the community, and it just all came together. So I'm really grateful for my experience and my education at Hawthorn.
Well, thank you so much for that. There's a few questions if you'll stay for that.
Yeah.
We're wondering about food safety rules and regulations that are involved in this, and what you've had to learn and face and adapt in your kitchen, and if there's a way that anybody else can research this as well.
Good question. I definitely had to learn a lot about food safety. Not only is the facility that we were in had to be inspected and approved by the health department, but also so did our program. So we had to make sure everything at the church was in the condition that it needed to be. And I also had to write, there's some guidelines out there, but I had to write a whole set of what they call standard operating procedures, and following our state's food, health, and safety codes. And then I also have our teens. It's not a requirement, but I did have all of our teens and our kitchen volunteers do an online food handler safety class. So before they come into the kitchen and do a training with us, they've at least already gone through that. And it's a $15 cost, and you know, most people pay for that themselves, and it at least gets people a very good awareness about health and safety. And so we are inspected annually. We do have to make sure that we go through our checklist of checking temperatures of food and refrigerator temperatures and things like that. But we've got a nice notebook and a good checklist, and that definitely came over time. And so I think someone had asked about how they go about researching that, and was that the food safety? Or
yes, if somebody else wanted to do a similar food-related business and starting it up, how would they research about the food safety and the regulations involved in their area?
Well, they are state by state, and I went down to our county health department and said, what do I need to know? And I found out that we actually ended up, it just depends on what type of program you have and what your state and county regulations are, but we ended up being licensed by like the Food and Dairy Council from the state, so we had to follow their guidelines rather than the county. But you just start by choosing, I'd start at the county level and finding out what you need to do. They normally don't really give you, it'd be great if they just gave you a nice operating handbook, but they usually just say this is what you have to do, and then you just have to create that. And there are some websites, if you put in standard operating procedures or kitchen procedures, licensed kitchen procedures, there's some different things that pop up, but you do have to follow your state guidelines.
Okay, thanks. And then back to funding for the business. Certainly you started a not-for-profit, but how did you get the financing to start this project? And did you have to get grants or government money, or where would anybody else look for this type of information too?
Yeah, well, that was probably one of my biggest challenges in starting the nonprofit, is how we're going to get the funding. We had a lot of conversations with the board. Do we write a lot of grants and get a nice, padded bank account before we start? And there are other projects that have done that, rallied support in the community through fundraisers. Our board decided that we just really needed to get rolling and show the community what we were doing, so then they would be more likely to donate. So there's some pros and cons to each side, but what we did is kind of like a GoFundMe. I went to CrowdRise, which is a nonprofit, and so this is kind of where your friends and family come in and support you with some donations, enough to get started. Because what I found was, in getting started, a lot of the foundations and other grants or other organizations in the community that you can write grants for, they're a little bit skeptical about giving a grant to a brand new organization, because they don't want to give you $20,000 and then have you fold. And so what I was told time and time again is, we need to see that you and your board and your internal people have the passion and the drive to get this program off the ground yourselves. And then now I'm in a good position that, okay, we've been a year and a half, we've served all these meals, we're here to stay, and now I can try to write locally for some bigger organizations. So I think the main thing is, you can do a CrowdRise to get some startup funds from family and friends, and another great way is just to do a fundraiser. And a fundraiser is a great super opportunity to educate the community about the work that you're trying to do. We did not do that initially, and I wish we would have done something like that. We're also looking at, corporate donors. Lots of businesses do fund drives for nonprofits, and it's just about finding out who those groups are. And we're actually writing right now, this week, there's a capacity building grant that I'm writing for, which is to bring in experts to help us develop our board and to develop our fundraising plan and to develop our long-term financial goals, so we can really, increase the amount of people that we're serving and grow in that regard.
Yeah, you've got a real business here, Wendy, and it brings me back to the question of the board. You need a strong board for this. How did you draw from your community? How big is your board, and is it a very diverse board? Can you speak about that a little bit?
Yeah, the board has been a challenge, and I, in hindsight, would have gone for a larger board early on. We started off with 5. And then we wrote in our bylaws that it would be a maximum of 12. And, initially we thought that having a smaller board would be beneficial, because then you don't have so many people trying to come up with a lot of decisions about how your program should be run and operated. But we've struggled then, because we are a working board, and I made it very clear that this is a working board versus a board that some people sit on to lend their name or their business name. And then we're stretched way too thin with having 5, and then you maybe get up to 7 or 8, and then somebody has to leave, or they move, or life happens. And so we're striving now to have a board of 10 board members, and we strive to have some cultural diversity, but that is definitely a challenge. We tend to be predominantly females and Caucasian, and we are really trying to make an effort to expand that. But we are also challenged in trying to get the diversity on the board in terms of knowledge base and what people can share. So it'd be nice to have somebody that's in the accounting field or the lawyer. You know, there's different aspects that we're looking at. What are the skills that we have? What are the skills that we're lacking? And how do we get those people? So we're actually right now in the process of going through this board building phase.
Mm-hmm.
And
really
yes, they are all members from the community. Yeah.
Yeah, no, thank you. It's another rarely discussed piece in business, and for what you're doing, it's very complicated, and you don't just need people on your board, you need active members that are invested in what you're doing and have skills that they can bring and help guide this project.
Yes, and I think I thought starting a nonprofit was going to be really easy. Oh, this will be so much easier than just starting my nutrition consulting business as planned. But I realized that it's a business, like you said. It's a nonprofit versus a profit. It's still a business. And, there's different components to each one. But, yes, I've learned a lot.
Do you feel satisfied by what you're doing, both by the work of it and what you might be earning as an income from it?
Well, that is definitely, that's a good question. I feel very satisfied and nourished by the work I do emotionally. Like, I am so grateful that I can help people. I think back to how I was feeling when I was a patient, and I'm so deeply filled with gratitude that I can support those people. I would like to be having a larger salary, but I think that comes with time. Like I mentioned, starting a nonprofit is a business, and that takes time to build, and with that comes your salary. But I made a commitment that I was going to do this, and I didn't think it would maybe take as long to get off the ground as it's taken, but I think you just have to really, depending on your community, this is a really large community, and there are a lot of non-competing nonprofits, and you just really have to earn that respect of your community members and have them have a vested interest and a passion in what you're doing and being able to showcase the work you're doing to the community.
Right.
And it really just takes a little bit more time than I thought, but it's getting there, and I'm really proud of the work we've done and where it's going, and I think next year it's just going to really flourish. You get at some point in time where it just starts to take off.
Well, we'll bring it back next year this time and have you report in again, Wendy. You certainly have my respect, Hawthorn's respect, and what I notice here is that you are showing up with full integrity and being very authentic, and that will garner the respect that you need and deserve from the larger community at hand. And I wish you every success in growing this. The community needs it, unfortunately, so much, and I'm glad you're there to serve.
Well, thank you very much, and it's a wonderful project, and we've had I will say, we have a great response in the community. We haven't had anyone even for a minute question what we are doing, so the response has been great. It just takes a little time. So thank you for listening to this, and if anyone has any questions, they can certainly look up Revive and Thrive Project, and there's a link to my email, and I'd be happy to answer any additional questions. And thank you so much, Paula, again, for having me.
It was my great pleasure to have you here and share this information. And I look forward to other Hawthorn students and graduates learning more about what you're doing and being inspired by it. I'm very inspired by you, your dedication, and your commitment through all of this, through all of your school and training and steadfastness in the business world. So bravo to you, congratulations, and I'll have you back next year to fill us in and update, okay?
Great, thank you.
You bet. All right, just in closing, I want to say that this was our last All About Alumni for 2016. We will be back in 2017 on Wednesday, January 4th with Rebecca Katz. She has some exciting new courses that she's running on the back of 5 bestseller books that she has published. The first one was her master's thesis here at Hawthorn, and 4 more on the tails of that. So we'll be back here at 12 noon Pacific time, January 4th. Until then, take good care.